Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. The Iraqi government's offensive against the Islamic State in Mosul is in its third day. The Iraqi general in charge of the operation, General Silvan Barzani, says that it could take 2 more weeks just to enter the city and 2 months to liberate it from the Islamic State. Iraq's head of special forces, Lieutenant General Talib, seemed to contradict the general when he said taking over the city could be faster than expected. Let's have a look.
Plans are being implemented faster than expected. The movement of the forces was fast, and they were fast in circumventing the city from all sides. The forces closed in on the city of Mosul, and therefore the liberation of the city will be fast. You know that we cannot disclose plans and timings due to security and military reasons, but we are fully confident that the city will be liberated in a very short time, God willing.
The effort to retake Mosul has become of great importance for the Iraqi government and its backers in Washington because it is the last major city controlled by ISIS. So far, the UN estimates that about 900,000 people have fled the city, but in the coming months, they expect the population of 1.3 million in the city to be also leaving and fleeing Mosul. Joining us now to discuss the situation is Sabah Alnasseri. Sabah is an associate professor at York University in Toronto and editor of Arab Revolutions and Beyond, the Middle East and Reverberations in the Americas. Sabah, so good to have you with us.
Good afternoon from Toronto, Sharmini.
So, Sabah, why don't you start by explaining to us this contradiction between the general and the head of special forces in Iraq?
I mean, in operational sense, Silvan is right. This conflict will take longer than what the Iraqi government or their allies expect. Will not finish within 2 days or 2 weeks or even 2 months. We talked about this the last time on the Real News, and I was expecting that it will take maybe until winter, the new year. So he's right in this sense. But the problem is, as I said, it refers to a deeper conflict between the Kurdish government, regional government, and the Iraqi central government around the question of who controlled what in the city of Mosul after its so-called liberation. Because the Kurds, they have some claims, at least to part of the city in Mosul, and the Iraqi government, of course, consider Mosul as part of the rest of Iraq and not of the part of the territorial integrity of the regional government in Kurdistan. And this, of course, will bring a lot of tension and conflict because, as we saw in Sinjar before, when the Kurdish Peshmerga troops kicked out ISIS from there, they tend to displace the Arab population from the city and bring Kurdish population to change the demographic character of the city. So that's one of the conflicts between the two governments around the territorial integrity or claims to parts of the cities, depending on the ethno-sectarian understanding of it.
Now, Sabah, at least officially at this point, both the Peshmergas and the Iraqi forces are joint in this effort. Apparently,
Yes.
There's about 28,000 Iraqi and Peshmerga troops fighting to liberate Mosul, along with the U.S. forces and special forces support. And they're all expecting to expel the 5,000 or so ISIS fighters that are on the ground in Mosul. How successful do you think this effort is going to be in terms of expelling ISIS from Mosul?
Yeah. I mean, we can increase the number from 28,000 to at least 35,000 if we include the so-called the popular mobilization units, which is the Shiite militia mostly trained by Iran. So if we include these forces and, of course, not only the Iraqi army and the anti-terror units and Peshmerga, but also the so-called tribal forces, tribal civil forces, joining the fight against ISIL. So you can realistically estimate up to 35,000 soldiers and fighters and so on taking part in this operation. It is very difficult to estimate how many ISIS fighters within the city I mean, there's an estimation between 4,500 to 5,000. Some estimate up to 8,000. But the numbers are not so significant. Because I think ISIS had 2 years since 2014 when it occupied Mosul, 2 years' time to prepare for this operation. That means they built trenches around the cities, they burned oils, they put all LPDs, landmines, etc., to make it very difficult for any troop, the Iraqi army or the Peshmerga, to enter the city. And that's why I'm saying this will not take 2 days or weeks or even months. This will be a protracted, long-term conflict, even before the army enters the city.
Now, let's, of course, take a look at what the human cost of all of this is, Sabah. Now, the UN estimates about 900,000 people have already left the area, but 1.3 million or so still is remaining there. What will happen to this population, and what are the conditions they're living under now?
Yeah, that's the second issue I wanted to talk about, namely, as we saw in Fallujah and Ramadi, in Tikrit, etc., that the civilian population ultimately will pay the price. We saw not only, the displacement of the population, a massive displacement. According to the United Nations, maybe up to 1 million people will flee or be displaced from Mosul, the biggest refugee, crisis maybe in the world now, and that's because. Due to the lack of resources and capacity to accommodate these people. Worse still, what we saw in Fallujah and Ramadi, that especially these so-called popular mobilization units, Shiite militias, they tortured and killed many of these Sunni families who fled the cities. And so we will expect these atrocities, sectarian atrocity also in Mosul, especially those who flee the city. Because many of these Shiite militia assume that these people, these families are not just families, maybe they are members of ISIS or supporting ISIS, or they have some kind of affiliation to ISIS, etc. So we will see some kind of sectarian killing, just like in Fallujah and Ramadi. That's the second issue. The third issue, I referred to the first conflict between the Kurdish Peshmerga and the Iraqi central government. But there's also a third conflict between Turkey, the Kurds, and the Iraqi government. The Turkish government sent troops a few months ago to Bashika, which is next to Mosul. And you have Turkish troops stationed in Bashika. And the Turkish president, Erdogan, want the Turkish troops to participate in this operation against ISIS in Mosul. Not because he is against ISIL or want to liberate Mosul, but Turkey wants to secure some territorial gain in Mosul, especially where the Turkmen, or 3 million Turkmen are in Iraq, Turkish-Iraqi population, to secure the long-term presence of Turkish troops and military in Mosul, especially in the pockets where the Turkmen live. And that will bring a new conflict between the Turkish and the Kurdish government on the one hand, and the Turkish and the Iraqi government on the other. And not only because of this security and military issue, but because also of the sectarian issue. If you listen to what the president of Turkey, Erdogan, was saying, he said after the liberating of Mosul, only Sunni Arab and Kurd will stay in the city. So that means he is also invoking sectarian tones against not only the Shiite Arabs in the city, but also many people don't know that the Turkmen in Iraq, a lot of them also are Shiite. So there are Shiite Turkmen and Sunni Turkmen. That means the Shiite Turkmen will be also victim of these sectarian policies. So that's the third conflict that we would expect to happen once the ISIS kicked out from Mosul. And the fourth, and maybe the most important.
Just hold on for a second, yes. Sabah. If you could just give us a brief history here in terms of why do the Turks feel that they have this historic claim on the city of Mosul?
You see, in 1926, when the new Iraqi state was created under the British Empire, there was an agreement with Turkey that Mosul, Wilayat Mosul, which is the province of Mosul, will be part of the Iraqi state. And the Turkish government at that time accepted this new map of Iraq, provided that Mosul will stay as part of one Iraqi state. But now Turkey fears if Iraq fall apart and Mosul may become under the Kurdish occupation, as they consider, Turkey would put a claim toward the city of Mosul, want Mosul to be part of the Turkish state. So here's, as I said, another conflict in the making, taking place even before the operation starts in Mosul.
All right, and now you wanted to make a fourth point.
Yes, and I think this is the most significant one. Just like in Fallujah, Ramadi decreed before, the problem is you don't have a well-functioning Iraqi state unless a well-functioning security state, a security apparatus, and an army. So what happens is, in the last operations in Ramadi, Fallujah, Tikrit, etc., when ISIS fighters were kicked out from these cities, most of the Shiite militias, or the Peshmerga, actually were dominating and controlling the whole operation, and, as I said, practiced either ethno-demographic shifts, like in the case of the Peshmerga, or sectarian killing, like in the case of the Shiite militias. That means, just like before, so too now, and this is more significant because Mosul is the second largest city in Iraq with almost 2 million population. There are no post-conflict, post-liberation arrangement for the city. The only thing, as far as I know, or as far as I heard, was that it came from the Iraqi government that they want to divide Mosul in 6 or 8 ethno-sectarian cantons. That means they want to cantonize the city of Mosul, making it, a future potential for all possible conflicts, suggesting that this is the only possible way to have a peaceful coexistence in the city, which is absurd. Because if you look at the city of Mosul until 2014, when it was occupied by ISIS, it used to have a functioning government, all people were represented, there were no conflict, nothing. So the plan, which actually also the Kurds are okay with it because they hope to get part of the territory of Mosul as part of Kurdistan, will create an enormous sectarian and ethnic conflict in Mosul in the post-conflict time. And that is, as I said, maybe the worst case scenario that will happen in the next few months.
And then, of course, there was some speculation that ISIS leader Baghdadi is actually in Mosul. What is the local press saying about that?
Well, all this rumor and speculation, they are just as such, rumor and speculation. This is not so important. It is important in one, maybe a military propaganda sense, because, especially the Iraqi army, the Iraqi government want to suggest, liberating Mosul will be the end of ISIS. And so assuming that al-Baghdadi is in Mosul, the head of the Caliphate, that means de facto the end of the Caliphate and of ISIS, which is not the case. You can see that ISIS move freely between Iraq and Syria. So the only way to make sure that ISIS is weakened significantly is for the Iraqi army to occupy Tal Afar, which is to the west of Mosul, and that's the corridor or the route for ISIS to move between Iraq and Syria. So the problem is, and I think the Shiite militias, they have this in mind when they recruited thousands of their forces, which is now in Syria, they brought them to Tal Afar precisely to do this. But the problem with this, when these Shiite militias control Tal Afar, it will, of course, weaken the movement of ISIS and then make it difficult for the ISIS fighter to flee the city of Mosul. But so too for the civil population, they'll be shocked. And considering the sectarian nature of these militias, backed by Iran, we will witness another massacre in Tal Afar. So the situation is anything but flowery.
All right, Sabah, I thank you so much for your analysis here and look forward to you providing us an update, hopefully next week.
My pleasure, and thanks for having me, Shamini.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.